Hi friends, it's Becky, and it is time for me to share with you a little tutorial where I make two different jewelry sets using both the Bargain Bead Box for July 2025 and the companion bundle for the Bargain Bead Box. This is a limited edition bundle that was put together by the folks at Bead Box Bargains, which is the sister store for Bargain Bead Box, a bead subscription. And it's usually really fun because you've got like some of the same types of gemstones or complementary ones, some additional focals and things so that they are there to expand what you can do with your Bargain Bead Box. And I love making two separate jewelry sets with that in the same video. It's something that I have done fairly regularly when I get a companion bundle, and recently my sister, who's joined my channel and is a co-creator with me, has begun doing her Jenny's version. Now you may already watch Jenny's version. If you didn't, I will put her version in the description below so you can watch that, and otherwise you can sit here and watch this with me. Now what we're going to be doing is one beaded chain necklace and one strung necklace for this, and the beaded chain necklace is going to be using the companion bundle, and I will put links in the description below to Bargain Bead Box and to Bead Box Bargains if you'd like to check either or both of these out. The last time I checked, they had extras of both of these still available at Bead Box Bargains for purchase, so if you are not a subscriber, you may still be able to get your hands on some of these. Anyway, this was themed Ice Cream Shop, and so one of the things that they gave us was this gorgeous pointed pendant in rose quartz, which is one of my favorite gemstones ever. So I took this and I made some links with these rose quartz faceted cylinders. They're kind of these rough nuggets. I will show you how. I saved a couple of them out, so I'll show you how to make those as part of this tutorial. I also made a little link using these spacers and a couple of these smaller faceted rose quartz rounds. And so again, I will show you how to do that with these as part of this tutorial. And I'm going to be linking them together using some jump rings and these swirly pretty links that we've got there that came in the Bargain Bead Box. We'll be closing it all up using one of these magnetic clasps, and I'm also going to be using the swirly links and at least one of my quartz links for a bracelet, and I'll use two for an earring. I also made a little drop using the head pins that came in the box, and again, one of these spacers and the tiny round rose quartz beads. So I will move this out of the way and we'll get to that after we make the other one. I just wanted to get all of that info out here before we start, and then I will go over my materials for this one. I'll also review those materials when we start the next group of our makes. Right, so for this one I wanted to call out these colors from these super cute popsicle pendants that we got in here. I am going to be using some beads for an earring with these. I'm using these cherry quartz frosted rounds, the Peace Jade 6mm rounds, and these crackle glass frosted light mint green rounds. So we're going to be using those and these for the earrings. I'm going to move them out of the way for now. And then for the necklace, I thought I would do a double layer of the necklace. Even though we have 3 openings on these connectors, which are double-sided, I'm just going to use 2 of those openings for this connection. Since these are sort of larger beads, we don't need to crowd that, and they will be able to connect like that. I'm going to be doing some bead stringing to connect them to these connectors, and then add some of this chain, this stainless steel curb chain, for the rest of the necklace. We'll use these for closures. These are the toggle clasps that came in that box. And then we'll make some a double strand bracelet using those same beads and this connector and these. So we'll make a double strand bracelet, and I wanted to add this cherry as a little charm for that bracelet. I can't remember why I had this one out. Right, one of the things that I want to add to this strung necklace are some of these little bead caps. I'm also going to be adding some of these spacers to the strung necklace. So let's get started with our bead stringing. Just going to grab my bead caps out of here. They are in the same section as these larger bead caps, so I've got to separate them out. And I could have done that before we started recording, but I forgot to do that. Sometimes you just get so excited to start, you forget about one of your things that you had planned. So for the tools that I'm using, I have some of my basic beading tools, my round nose pliers, chain nose pliers, and flush cutters. When I get to the part where I am crimping this, I've got some 2x2 crimp tubes that I will be using, and my magical crimper, which is my favorite way of doing a crimp. If you choose to use a different type of crimp, I would suggest using a bead cap as well as your crimp. I usually don't have to use bead caps with the style of crimping that I do, which is why I'm not using that. I'm going to use some pink tourmaline soft flex wire to string these guys. I could use different colors, like I've got this fluorite would go really nicely with this light. Actually, you know what? Let's do fluorite instead of this, because that's a very bright pink, and these are very light pinks. I just changed my mind, because you are always allowed to change your mind. When we get to our beaded chain, by the way, I am using some 20 gauge wire for that one, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Alright, so I'm just going to start stringing along the side here. I've left the bail on this pendant because I'm just going to string it right onto here with these. And let's go ahead and just start adding some beads to my wire. I'm going to start with my little crackle glass guy, and then the bead caps. I want these little bead caps to sit there on either side of these cherry quartz beads, with the curved part towards that cherry quartz. Like that. And there's going to be 4 of the cherry quartz on each side, which means that there are 5 of the crackle glass for each side. So 8 and 10 total for this necklace. And then 1 each. There we go. I like the way that that looks. 1 each for the earrings that we're going to be making in just a little bit. I'm going to be pulling the beads out for the bracelet when we get to that part, but we're not there yet. We're just doing some easy stringing to start off with. All right. There we go. just going along. I love the addition of that really, really light green to the pinks. Pink and green is one of my favorite color combinations. I love how light and airy these colors feel. Just a beautiful pastel. Alright. Now this is going to be this part of that necklace. Let's turn that over. Oh, the other way. Yes, there we go. And I'm going to need to string that serpentine. I think this is exactly the length that I want. And since I don't have a specific order that I want to do this in, it can be as long or as short as I want with this. I can go ahead and I won't be changing anything about this part. I can go ahead and crimp it to either end of my design here. So I'm going to jump right into crimping. Get that going. I'm going to crimp directly to the to my connector. Okay. Yes. Alright, so to crimp with the magical crimper, let's zoom in a little bit. I'm going to center my crimp into the single crimp cavity that we have in the crimper. Make sure it is centered before you smush it. And then that just smushes down the corners. Turn it to a 90-degree angle. Give it another smush. Turn it again. Give it another smush. And just keep going around different angles. You can feel when it's done, it won't have any give. Alright, so that's now all crimped. I believe that this will all fit on there perfectly. Okay. Now I'm going to want to cut this with enough room on the wire to do some crimping on the other side. So you put your crimp on first, and that second crimp, by the way, is a little more complicated because there are going to be beads right next to it. That first one that I did, the beads were further down the wire, so I didn't have to worry about making sure that there was a little bit of space between the crimp and that next bead, which I have here. And now, if you need to, I will sometimes just wiggle my fingernail in between that last bead and the crimp to make sure that we've got enough space. That's so that you can center it in that little crimper without crushing any beads. Alright, that one's done. Okay. Now let's get these spacers out here, because the spacers are going to be doing some important work for me. We're going to add some of this piece jade, and I love that we have this sort of darker olivey green because that goes really well with that color from our popsicles. And we're just going to alternate spacer, piece jade, spacer, piece jade until it is the length that I want it to be. And I want it to be just a little bit shorter than this so that it hangs down but doesn't quite touch that part. So we'll check it in a little bit and see how long it's getting. Once I have enough of these strung on. Alright, so that is about 2/3 of the way through. Let's add some more beads. Do I have? No, I don't. And I do have more in my organizer, so I will pull those out in just a bit when I need it. I left them in here so that my my mat wouldn't be too crowded with all of the things for the bracelets too. I just wanted the things for this project to be out here for now. And I think two more will do. And actually, why don't I do those two more on that end? I'm going to go ahead and snip the other end and start stringing from the other end, just because that will balance the colors of these a little bit more. These darker ones will be a little bit closer in the middle. So I've put a bead stopper on this end to keep the beads from coming off. Okay. Now, I do think that that is going to layer very nicely. That's going to be just about the exact size that I wanted this to be. Alright, so let's go ahead and crimp this end on to that section over here on my connector. And I'm just going to be crimping it the exact same way that I did this lower strand. It's just going to be a little bit more fiddly because I will also have that other strand attached to my connector. But it's okay, I believe in me. I can handle fiddly things. Okay. I'm just trying to get this rotated while I get at it. There we go. That's good, good, good. Perfect, perfect, perfect. All right. Now let's do this one. This one will be the most fiddly. The fiddliest. I do quite like those together. This was such a dreamy color combination in this box. Absolutely love it. All right. So I'm just checking how it hangs. Sort of loving that. And seeing where I want this to be on a chest. I'm just going to hold it up to my neck. It's going to be a little bit longer than I usually like them. Usually like them a little on the short side, but this will hang nicely from there. All right. So if my chain ends at the collarbone here, and that's where it's going to be connected to, then let's measure off enough chain to do that with. This is stainless steel curb chain. And does it have a split in it? I don't think this has a split in it. So it will need to be snipped. There we go. Just going to shorten that just a little bit. I took the end of the curb chain and placed it on my collarbone, and then found when it went around the back of my neck where that would end. Okay, that's a little hard to snip. So instead of breaking my or dulling my snippers there, I'm just going to grab my I use these for cutting memory wire. They're very, very durable, and they work great for stainless steel as well, if stainless steel is a little bit harder to snip and cut. Now to find the middle of this chain so that I've got two equal length pieces, now that I've measured that. You could also do some math and just measure it with a like a measuring tape or a ruler or something like that. I'm a little more of a add the spices until with your sole, and measure with your heart of a jewelry designer. I could measure these after the fact. Just tell you how many inches I'm using. But when I'm in the flow, getting out the measuring tape and having to do math isn't always my favorite thing to do. Alright, so let me grab a couple of jump rings for this. Just going to grab some 5mm jump rings in a stainless steel color. And let's assemble. So I've got my chain nose pliers, and I'm just going to grab my crimpers because they've got a nice flat bit there that help me hold one end of my jump ring so that I can attach one of the ends of my chain to that and the other end of my necklace to the same jump ring. I am going to be using more of these for the next design, so it's not a bad idea for me to just get a whole handful out. I'll probably need to grab more as well. Let's connect the other side. Then we're going to connect our closures. That was my loop attached to this end of the chain. And for this one, it's the toggle. Close that up. There you go. And that's my necklace. Let's make a bracelet, because this is basically going to be about the length of that bracelet, I believe. A little bit longer for this serpentine piece jade. But I think this length is going to be perfect. So let me grab the same number of beads for that strand. One, two, three, four, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, something like that. And then these cherry quartz guys. And then a big old scoop or 2 of these. So we're just going to do a double strand bracelet. We'll use the same wire, same connectors. It's just this strand on the bracelet will be a little bit longer because it won't need to be, you know, nestled inside there. It can be the same length as the first. So let's get these guys strung. Do I have more of the... I do. 2. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, so I've got 13 of those. It'll all be fine. I may not be able to use all of my... maybe we should start from the middle out. Because if that is the right length, and that's going to be 1, 2, 7. Each of these. Be on either side. Nope, just 6. That would be fine. You know what, we can add length next to the closure. That's something we can do. And I know just how to do it, using the curb chain. Okay, that goes about halfway. What we can do, we can just add more of these guys on either end. I think that'll be fine. Just gonna add more of these to lengthen that. I'm gonna snip off this wire though, so that I can start stringing the other one. Making sure I've got plenty of wire for crimping and for adding more beads. We're just going to go there for right now. But I do want to start crimping or start beading these guys on here. So let's do, where am I? There they are. Spacers. Whatever happens, it's going to need to be the same length as the other bracelet, so I like some of these ones with a little bit more purple in them. Some of them that have a little bit more green. Alright, just a couple more. And then let's check on our length. Yeah, I think that's almost the same size as this one. One of these has bigger beads than the other, so it's going to push it out more. I think we're going to need a spacer or two. Let's see how it does, how it fares for being an equal size. That one is going to definitely need more beads than the other. Yep. And you can see there, it's pulling on that wire more, so now it's shorter on the other end. This is only going halfway around. So let's add a few more of these beads on here. And keep in mind that we will have a chain to extend and all of that other stuff. So let's go ahead and start adding a couple of these guys onto the ends. I am going to use these little spacers though. Like that. Two more. I have two spacers in a row on there. Let's swap that out. Here we go. Right now it seems like it's longer, but it probably won't be once we get it around the mandrel. Ooh. It's just a little bit longer. What if I take off one of those spacers on the end? I think if I took off the spacer on the end, let's try that. Maybe just one more on this. All right. I know where we're going with it, and I think I'm going to be happy with the sizing of this. With a spacer on each end of that one. Yep, that's going to fit nicely. All right, so let's snip this. And let's get this one out of the way. These guys all out of the way. So I can start putting together my bracelet. And I'm going to be crimping onto here exactly the same way that I crimped these guys on there. Exactly. And luckily these are the same on both sides, so I don't have to worry about which end I'm connecting it to. I can just do whichever end for this one. And then when I do the next strand, I just connect it to the opposite end. Okay. Okay. Snip, snip. And now we have our second guy. Again, this one's going to be a little more fiddly because we've got the other strand attached to the connector. It does feel like it's shorter just a little bit when it's laying flat, but when you actually get it on a round thing, it will be a little bit, it'll be the same length. There we go. Oop. Just trying to get this back through. There we go. Sure, we've got a little bit of space between that bead and the crimp. All right. Alright, now I'm going to attach the hook here, or the loop, that's what it's called. I'm going to attach the loop side here using a couple of jump rings. I'll add a little bit of length so that it'll actually fit. But I'm also going to attach my little cherry dangle at the same time. So cherry dangle first, just for a little extra fun with this, and then my loop. I'm going to attach the loop. Ooh, maybe I should attach this to here because it's got such a nice big loop. And now when I do that, my dangle is actually acting as part of a chain to extend the size of this bracelet so that when I add my toggle, it will fit perfectly. So I'm not going to need an extender chain, not going to need any of that. I am going to use 2 jump rings with my toggle though, because I like to have a little extra articulation on the toggle part of a toggle clasp. I didn't do that on the necklace because the chain that it's attached to gives me enough give and leeway for that one to be able to work well. So I'm just adding a jump ring to the end of this connector. And now we add another jump ring and the toggle clasp. And that is our double strand bracelet that will fit perfectly on my 7.5 inch wrist. It's actually 7 1/4 inch, but I do 7.5 just to make sure that it fits well. There we go. Alright, let's put that over here with the necklace, and let's make our earrings super quick. I am going to use my craft wire for this earring. I'm going to make a little link with these guys, and I'm going to do simple loops. That will allow me to open and close them fairly easy. And be pretty unobtrusive. Just moving some of my other bits and bobs out of the way so that we don't have too much more to clean up for the next one. I think I might pop a couple of spacers between these guys. So I'm just warming up and straightening my wire. See, it's got a few kinks in it here, but by bending it one way and then bending it the other, just gently, just a gentle curve, it works out those kinks so you can end up with a nice straight piece of wire, and it's nice and warm and easy to work with. So let's plop some of these beads on here. I'm going to start with the pink and then a spacer, and then these are about the same size, so it doesn't really matter which order they go in, but I am going to do that. Piece jade, and then this crackle glass on top. like that a lot. Alright. Now the end of my wire is already flush cut from when I was working with it earlier, but if it's not, you can use the flush side of your flush cutters to give it a little snip and get a nice flush end on the end of your wire. And I'm going to just get the end of my wire about 1/3 of the way down from the pointy end of my round nose pliers. Right there. I'm not squeezing very hard, I'm just holding it and turning the pliers until that wire meets the end of that wire here. See how it's kind of pointing in one direction? I want to rock this back so that it centers it, and I'm just going to do that by putting the end of my pliers, this bit right here, this other jaw, setting that against the wire right next to where that end of the wire hit it, and twisting back towards me gently, just a little bit. That gives me a nice little centered loop for my simple loop. I like to also just do a squish with my chain nose pliers on my simple loops to help work harden them. And I push my beads up. This is why I work from the spool. And I'm going to measure 1 finger width down from my bottom bead. And make sure you snip the wire, not your finger. And holding my wire like this, I'm going to do a little bend up here at the top. With these pliers, I've got the edge of my chain nose pliers resting against the bead. You don't need to press very hard on this at all. It's just rested against the bead and the wire. And I'm just going to close these pliers and keep the edge right there where I left it. And that makes a little bend for me. I'm going to measure about 1 centimeter from the edge from that bend. You can use the measuring tool, or I like to use the side of my finger to measure, because I know from experience that that part of my finger is 1 centimeter. You may have different fingers than I do, so you may have different parts of your fingers that measure that length. But it's useful to have little bits of you that you know are this length or that length or another. I've known knitters that have like a 1-inch mark tattooed on their finger, so they could just measure wraps per inch with yarn without having to get out a ruler or a wraps per inch measuring tool or anything like that. Spinners mostly, not knitters. But you know, a lot of spinners are also knitters. And some of them are crocheters too. Some of them are weavers. There you go. Useful tattoos, right? I'm going to do the other one real quick while I've got you. It's going to be a little less explaining with this one. We're just going to make our little link and connect it up there. Do you know what I've forgotten to do? Is grab some ear wires. I think I've got some here. I do. Because that is an important part of earring making, is having ear wires that are available. And these earring pops are resin, so even though they're pretty large, they're very lightweight, so they'll make some really, really great earrings. And I've got some ear wires here I can connect that to. Alright, so here's our earrings and a double strand bracelet and a double strand layered necklace. And this was using beads and findings from the Bargain Bead Box for July 2025. This was the Ice Cream Shop or Ice Cream Shoppe Bargain Bead Box. Now let me move these guys out of the way. I'm going to pull out all of the findings and links that I've already made and the things that I want to use to create the second set of jewelry using the companion bundle. So I'll be right back once I've got this cleared out and I've got the other ones right here on my mat. Okay, so here's project number 2. We're going to have a beaded chain necklace that's going to use some of these filigree links and some of the links that I've made using some of this faceted rose quartz. Let me show you how to make these links. I'm using some wrapped loop links, and then we'll be joining them together with some jump rings. I'll also be using one of these links and 2 of these for bracelet, and add some of these little guys there. These are some of the smaller 4mm faceted quartz beads. For earrings, I'm also going to be using the same links, but I'm going to make a drop instead of a link using some of the these fancy spacers that we have here. So let me show you how to make these 2 links that we're going to be using, and then we'll put these together. I have already put together one side of the necklace so you can see how that goes together here. So I'll demonstrate that real quick. I am using 20 gauge wire. This is the same wire that I used in the other project. And I'm just going to, like the other one, start out with straightening this wire, just using my fingers. This wire is very malleable, so it's easy to straighten with your fingers. Some thicker or harder wire, you would want to use some nylon gel pliers to use to straighten it, but this also lets me warm up the wire so that it's easy to work with. So right here on the end of my wire, I'm going to place my bead that I'm going to make a link with. I like to work off the spool because it helps cut down on wastage. And about 2.5 to 3 inches from the end of my wire, I'm going to take my round nose pliers and about 1/3 of the way down the barrel, I'm going to grab that wire. You do not need to squeeze the wire hard when you do this, but I'm just going to bend it back away from me to make a little L-shaped bend, and then I'm going to use my finger to push that wire up over the top of that round barrel. Open up your round nose pliers, rotate that lower barrel to the top, and then just keep going around with that wire. And that makes a loop that you can use on your design. Now I'm going to go ahead and wrap this. I'm going to hold on to that loop with this plier, and you can either use your fingers if it's a soft wire like this, or another set of pliers in order to wrap this around here. but you're going to want about 3 or 4 wraps, and then snip off your excess wire. And then I'm going to push my beads up, and I'm going to measure using my fingers from the bottom of that bead about 3 fingers down from the end. Snip the wire, not your fingers. And then I'm going to hold on to this and use my pliers on this end. I want to, because I want my, oh my gosh, do they match? A little bit. Okay, anyway, because I want my loops to be parallel to each other, I've got it turned so that the loop disappears, so that it just looks like a little line. So when it's turned that way, I can push with my finger over the top of the pliers that's holding it to make a little bend away from me. And then I can use my round nose pliers to make the same kind of loop that I did before. And because I'm using some jump rings to connect these, I don't have to worry about connecting this loop to this link or anything like that before I wrap it. You can link these types of links together as you go if you leave it open and wrap the next link in a chain before doing this part of the wrap. But it can often be much easier to use jump rings to connect them. Also, the jump rings often will give you a more flowy sort of drape to your necklace. So now that that is the wrapped loop link, just like these other ones that I've made, and I've got 4 per side, so 8 total of these. I'm going to be using 2 per side, or 4 total of these for the necklace. And this next link is wrapped loop as well, only instead of a single bead, I've got 3 beads. I'm going to be using this 4mm faceted bead, the big spacer, and another 4mm faceted bead. And then the same method to create the wrap looped link that I used previously. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to measure off our wire. Just going to straighten that out a little bit. And use those pliers to make a bend. Up and over, all the way around. You can even just hold on to it while it's still on your round nose pliers and do your wrapping if you wanted to. And if you've got just kind of a shorter length of wire, you can use a second set of pliers to do that wrapping. To get that down there. One thing I would say is wrap gently, especially next to gemstones. You don't want to wrap too tight, because once that gemstone is under pressure with a very tightly wrapped wire, it might start to crack and break. Be kind to your gemstones. Alright. Now, let's connect this using some jump rings. This is the easy part, because you just open and close those jump rings to get these together. So we're going to connect one of my links to a jump ring, and then close that jump ring up, and then connect the next link to that same link. Now this is the big part that you need to pay attention to, is the orientation of these links. Because they have a wrong side and a right side, you're going to want both of your right sides to be facing up when you're doing that. So to do that, I'm going to lay this out and just make sure that we are going through these holes in the correct order. So if I go through this top hole like this, and then this one like this, then it's going to lay out correctly when it's laying on your neck or when it's laying on a mat. Laying on the neck is the important part. Alright. Now this other part I don't need to be that careful about the orientation or anything like that, because it is. There is no right side or wrong side for the rest of these links. There is no top and bottom. We can just put them together. It's just these links that we need to be careful about. Alright. And this guy is just going to go around the back of the neck. These are very long links, so it's just going to be a little more comfortable to wear, having these shorter links with smaller beads in between them around the back of the neck. I do have enough of these longer links that I could have just used that in the necklace, but I'm doing it for comfort's sake. There we go. Now I've got this length, and we've got this other side. And now I'm going to connect them to the pendant. Now before I started, I removed the bail that was on this pendant. You can do that just by squeezing the big part of it and moving that in, and then taking that part off of there. It's just a little pinch bail. So I removed that off, and I'm going to use a couple of jump rings to connect the ends of these chains to the pendant. So, chain one, I don't think there's a front or back to this. I guess it would be whichever side you want people looking at. Go. And now I'm going to attach my clasp. I'm thinking that I might, because these are a little bit heavier, instead of using this magnetic clasp for this necklace, because I don't want it just flying off while I'm wearing it, I'm going to go ahead and grab one of these toggle clasps from the other box. I'm going to use that for my necklace. I'll use the magnetic clasp for my bracelet because that's a little bit easier to handle, I think. And so I'm just going to grab a couple of jump rings for the toggle part of my toggle clasp, because I like having more than one for greater articulation. Let's just add that to this toggle. And then use this one to connect it to my chain. And then use another jump ring to connect that loop part. There we go. Alright, let me get this moved out of the way and we'll start looking at putting together this bracelet. Alright, so I'm going to do half the bracelet like this with these links, and the other half we're going to string onto some beading wire. Actually, let me use, yeah, that one. Just going to use the white soft flex for this one with these smaller bits here, and they are going to be connected with the magnetic clasp. Alright, so let's get these links connected. Use some of these jump rings for that. There you go. Alright, so that side is up. Again, I'm going to just make sure, hey, magnetic clasp, move out of the way. There we go. Make sure that this is going to be facing the same way. Now, I'm going to give these a little bit of a curve because I can. Just pressing down on the corners with my thumbs and resting it against my knuckles here. And this way, we're just going to add a little bit of a curve. You can also do it with your thumbs to these bits. That way they'll fit around a wrist a little bit better because they are fairly long. And I want to make sure that they fit when they are around a wrist. And we're going to do the same thing with this. Just going to take these loops and this bead and kind of bend my loops like that. There we go. That's going to fit on a wrist a lot better. Whoop. A lot better than it would if those were still straight. And now I'm going to connect one end of this wire to this loop here using my crimps. This is just about a maybe 5-inch strand, maybe closer to 6, because you need to have room for crimping when you do these things. Let's get this crimped on here. And because some of you may have skipped past the earlier one, I'm going to go ahead and describe how I crimp. You may not have seen me do it yet if you were skipping ahead just to watch this. I am going to put a crimp on my wire, go through the loop, bend my wire back, and go back onto my crimp. This is my favorite way of crimping because I don't need a crimp cover. It makes a nice little smooth ball of crimp on here. There we go. So now I've got my little loop there. Got my crimp next to my loop. And I'm going to grab my pliers, or my crimper. There's a little concavity right in there. And I'm just going to center that 2x2 crimp tube in there, and then give it a squish. And that squishes just the corners of that crimp. Then turn it at a 90-degree angle, give it another crimp, and then just keep hitting it from different angles. Just go around and give it a squish, and then around, and then a squish, and then around, and then a squish, until you have your smooth little ball of crimp. Alright, now I'm going to snip off my excess wire, and I'm going to start stringing some of these beads on here until I feel like it is the right length for me. And these are just those 4mm beads. We're just going to add them on here. All these little guys. So this bracelet will be asymmetric. One half will have the links and the other half will have the string of rose quartz faceted rounds. Okay. And in just a minute I'm going to grab that bracelet mandrel and check the size, but I want to get a couple more of these guys on here first. Just a few more. This is so light against this light background. It might be hard to see what that is looking like or what it's starting to look like with that. But if I move this out of the way against that darker background, you can see it a little bit easier. Okay, let's check our length. I'm going to do it just by going through this loop. And bringing this around. Do you see how that curve that we added to the links is going to help that fit much better? And it looks like I'm going to have plenty of space right there, or just the right amount of space to add this clasp. So let's go ahead and get the end of this wire crimped onto the clasp, and then we will jump ring the other end of the clasp, which is already just a big fan of these jump rings. This is the fun of playing with magnetic clasps, is that everything decides to adhere to it sometimes. Alright, oh wait, I need to crimp this first. I'm going to make a loop with the crimp and this wire, and then I'll just use the jump ring to, let's just crimp it directly onto here. I'm going to be using the jump ring for that end. We can crimp that, the other end, directly on. Nothing wrong with that. So, now we're going through here. Now, this is a steel wire underneath the nylon coating, so it does attract itself to something magnetic. So trying to get that through the hole is a little bit problematic, but that's okay, because I can do problematic things. I can do hard things. Alright, let's make this loop. I'm going to make sure that I have enough space on this end between my crimp and the bead next to it to be able to fit my crimper on there. And this is also going to be a fun challenge because the magnetic clasp wants to hang on to my crimper. So fiddly bits. There we go. All crimped. All we need now is one more jump ring, and this bracelet will be done. So let's open and close this sucker. I'm going to go through this part first because it will be much less of a struggle. And I can remove those guys after I get this connected. There we go. Also, I can open and close the clasp to readjust these guys. There we go. Bracelet. Alright, I'm going to move this bracelet over with the necklace. And let's make some earrings real quick. I'm going to make a dangle just like this one, using that spacer, one of these 4mm quartz beads. And one of these ball head pins. Let's put this guy on here. Now I'm going to hold the little stack here in one hand, and I've got my round nose pliers in the other. I'm going to grasp right next to the beads, and then while this is open, sort of tip it up again, just kind of like I did with the chain nose pliers and I was doing that bend. But I'm going to close this. It's going to make a little bit of a shallow bend there. And then I can pull this up and around, rotate it over, and start wrapping this wire around the head of this dingle. And once I've got myself a nice little wrap on the top of that, I can take my flush cutters, snip off my excess, and tuck the end of this wire gently, because you're right next to the gemstone. Tuck the end of this wire into that wrap so that I've got myself a little dingle. Alright, now let's put these guys together. Got some ear wires, and I was thinking of doing these and then these and then these. Then I thought, no, let's do these up top and have these dangles right there at the very bottom, like that. And I kind of like that balance a little bit better. So, jump rings. Open and close. And these will be dangly, shoulder dustery kind of earrings, but with the tiny dangles and with these sort of lighter weight links, they won't be super heavy. I like long earrings, so this is why these are going to be fairly long earrings. When you're wearing your hair down, sometimes it's hard to see the earrings that you're wearing unless you're wearing some long ones. Long, dangly guys. I grabbed a couple of these. That I thought, why are these connected to each other? How are these connected to each other? Well, that's none of my business. I'm just going to let them live their lives. Yeah, that jump ring had, the ends were overlapping on this jump ring, so I was just maneuvering it so that the ends would close closer together. And now it's going to close the way I want it to. And by the ends overlapping, it's like that. There you go. And grab yourself some ear wires, stick these on there. Close those up. Alright, so there we are. We are done. Let me pull out that whole set. And you can take another look at that. And then I'll pull out the first set that I made so we can see them all together. So we've got our bracelet. And then we've got the beaded chain necklace that goes with it. And then that first set that we made is this one with that cherry quartz and peace jade and these super whimsical, super sweet popsicle charms pendants, and these multi-connectors that allow us to make a couple of rows of beads right here for a layered look. Alright, so that's what I've made with my Bargain Bead Box during this session. And that was the July Ice Cream Shoppe Bargain Bead Box. I kind of stayed a little way away from the whimsy, but absolutely love it for earrings. And then this was with the companion bundle. This one's more just rose quartz and silver. And this one we indulged in a few other colors, especially to go with the this green and pink in these so that they can match. And again, if you missed my sister's version, I will be linking that in the description. I'll also link you to Bargain Bead Box if you'd like to check them out. They are the best value for money bead subscription that is out there. They're beautifully curated with gemstones, check glass, always curated to a theme, and they are one of my favorite things ever to subscribe to. So we'll put a link in the description for that, and to Bead Box Bargains, where the last time I checked, before I started recording this, they still had extras of both the Bargain Bead Box and the companion bundle. They made up a bunch of these this time. Usually they sell out very quickly, and it's hard to get your hands on if you don't pick one up right when they release them, but they made so many this time because they didn't want anybody to have to miss out. So you could pick up either one of these or both at Bead Box Bargains, and I have a coupon code that you can use for a couple dollars off of your first month's bead subscription from Bargain Bead Box. Again, that'll be in the link in the description below, or you can use that coupon at Bead Box Bargains for your first purchase from that site. Until next time, my friends, happy beading.